Hi guys, so I'm just going to show you all a couple of things about the gradient tool. It can be a little tricky to start working with, but once you get the hang of a few key things, you can explore it further and use it in your projects accordingly. Now, it's real easy to get carried away with this tool. You want to use it strategically and thoughtfully. One of the first ways to use a gradient is to just use a linear gradient across an object. And you change the colors of your gradient by actually dragging colors up into your gradient palette. And you can bring the colors in and you can pick as many colors as you'd like, and you can pull colors off as well. So you can see if I apply a gradient by clicking on these three objects and clicking the gradient tool, it applies to all three. Now, if I want this gradient to actually apply across these three objects, I can actually select this. And then using the gradient tool over here in the tools, I can run the gradient across the entire object. And how I do that, let's first make these have the gradient. And then I can apply my gradient across the entire object like this. And if I have this selected, I can actually drag these colors in order to get them right where I want them to shift through the gradient. Another really good use of a gradient is to use it radially. So if you see here, perhaps I want to make this orange circle that was orange, just look like a sun or have some dimension. Then I can use the gradient and use it radially. You can change where this radius goes. If you want it to look like it has some depth, just by using this gradient tool here and clicking where you want it to go and then dragging it around. And again, once you have the gradient tool selected, you can alter and rotate, and you'll see your selection arrow shifts based on where you're clicking within this space. You can even move it around and see how you want it to be. Sometimes I also like to use this technique, just creating a little highlight, by adding another object on top and using a radial gradient. That way, it gives me a little bit more control. So one thing I would do is I would make this, like say I just want the circle to look like it has a little bit of a highlight. I actually want the white, which would be the highlight, on the inside of this circle. So I switch these two colors, and I want it to be more of like an oval shape. So I'm going to adjust my object here. And again, that is a little bit too harsh of a highlight. That's not the look I'm going for. So I'm going to zoom in here. And again, clicking on this, I grab my gradient tool and I can actually adjust that gradient. And then in here, I can make that gradient also be an oval shape, just like the shape that I created. Oops, let me undo. Then you can see here, instead of just having a gradient like this where it goes out from one point on, I have a little bit more control. I can change the shape and I can still control the radius of it. I just like to, it's just a different technique to use. So that's a couple things on gradients. One thing that people don't know right away is that when you make objects, you can actually have the gradient extend throughout the entire object. You just have to have all of those selected. The same if you're applying a gradient to a text. Remember to type, create outlines for your fonts. Now they are shapes, and you can apply that gradient to those, and it defaults to each individual letter. So you get your gradient tool, and then you can apply that gradient across the entire word. So that's just a few things about gradients. I hope you guys find that helpful, a few tips, and can't wait to see what you create with it.